All right, welcome to the Code Catch Up. This is our second edition, and basically these Code Catch Ups are kind of just a bit of us chatting about the gear that we're creating. And the first one was mainly about the 850S and the first setup that we had, and since then we've had the 720 and the 980 released to shops, and we're on the verge of releasing a few other things too, but we'll get to that a bit later. But I might go to Marcus to start with, and I guess being the smallest of the four of us, I reckon you're probably enjoying the 720 more than the others. So talk to us about the 720, Marcus, and what you're loving it for, and what you're seeing it, excelling in.
Yeah, cool. No worries. So the 720 I've been using heaps for winging over here. I've just been up in Exmouth and used it for everything from proning sort of 1 to 2 foot and winging a solid 8 foot. And yeah, it's really good. Been really happy with its range, and in that small stuff, I've been using it with bigger tails that we've been playing with to get a little bit more out of it, because I'm a little bit lazy, and it just gets it closer to that 8 sort of. It makes it feel bigger, basically, for the pumping. And then in the bigger stuff with the wing, I was using it with just the 150 and long fuse. And yeah, it was great. Love it. I mean, I'm still figuring out if I like it more than the 850, because I do for Perth, where I pump a lot, because the wave's so short, you kind of want to link up 4 or 5, to make it worthwhile catching a wave. I think if I was on the East Coast, at some of the spots where maybe like where Ben foils Kira or something like that, where you can only link up maybe 1 or 2 and the ride's really long and you walk back around, it'd be 100% my go-to. I would never bother with the 850. But yeah, just also a little bit unfit of being out of the water for a little bit. So it was good to have a couple of solid weeks in the water up north and playing with a bunch of stuff. But the 720 probably got the most use up there. It was good. 720 and 850 were just constantly rigged.
I want to hear about the 8 foot sessions. I haven't heard this story, so we're all learning this. But so I think a few eyebrows will be raised when you talk about 1 to 2 foot in the morning, and then 8 foot in the arvos, and obviously the wing allows you to get into them a bit easier. But
yeah.
Tell us how you tuned your 720 for the bigger stuff.
Yeah, so in the on the prone, I was using it with our short fuse and a bigger tail. With the longer fuse and the bigger tail, it's too stiff. It's too stiff to pump, so you can't get that pumping motion going, and it sits so high and sort of refuses to sink, which is nice, but it also refuses to pump a little bit, because you've just got so much area back there. So I found I went right to the short fuse and kept the big tail on the back, and that was really nice to prone. And I found it a little nicer again because the tail was so big that I flattened out the tail a bit with the shim 0.5, I think I was using, and that was really nice. But then when I went to the winging stuff, and I knew it was going to be, so you can't really see it because it's a little bit offshore, but we knew it was going to be big, and we had I was using the 720 with the 85 mast, so different master prone as well, but totally different back end, where I had the long fuse and 150 tail. And I mean, realistically, I should have probably been on the 142. But it was really cool. The waves kind of storm in before they hit this reef, and they're big lumps, as big as a house or something. They're just huge lumps of water, and moving quite quick. And the 720 was really good. Like, it held with the wave. You could just start flagging out in the ocean, and the speed would hang with the wave, and you could just be laying into carbs while it's right up near its top end comfortably. And then you kind of, it hits the reef and slows down and walls up, and then you finally get to dive in, and it's a tricky spot because it sort of boils up on a shallow reef, and then you kind of got to duck back in behind it to be playing in the critical part of the wave. And it was really cool. It's the biggest stuff I've used the 720 in, and it was unreal. I loved it. I wouldn't have gone smaller, because it was nice having that area, you know, just that stability, I guess, with all the gear I had under me, and but still the fact that it could go as fast as the ocean swell, and also get to the bottom of it when you want to actually go down and do a bottom turn and then come back up. Yeah, that was kind of my findings with it in Exmouth. It was really good. If I could change anything, I probably just would have gone the smaller tail in that bigger stuff.
That's what I was going to ask. It sounds like the 142 would have been kind of.
Yeah, but it was still great. Like, it wasn't holding me back at all. I was still like going into the turns and everything as hard as I can. And that was the most time I spent on the 85 mast too. A lot of the stuff we do in Metro, like where I live in Perth, it's wind bumps and it's not really solid swells.
Yeah, I've actually found the 85 mast gives you the ability to kind of not be maxed out so soon, I guess. That little bit extra weight, but I guess also the extra ability to rise without breaching. Like sometimes on the 75, one of the beauties of that mast is that you can get the wingtips close to the surface and you just go faster. Whereas on the 85, I feel like I don't get that as much, so I can go bigger waves with the same setup.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously, like when you're going that fast, I didn't have a GPS, but man, it was it was full on. But you know, you hit boils and stuff, and everything changes so quick, and you know, you can pop to the top of your mast in a split second. So having that extra 10 centimeters is handy, and that can also happen in turns when you're kind of trying to get into the critical part of the wave, and that's all sort of breaking and forming on reef. So it's, you know, there's all boils and stuff, and it's funny. So yeah, it was nice to have that extra length for what was going on underneath, and it's not something I usually need for where I wing because it's small, and I like the agility of the small mast, and also for jumping and freestyle and stuff, I like the shorter mast as well. So yeah, it was really good. I got to use a bunch of stuff more that I don't really use as much in town.
Yeah.
And
do you not like the 85 mast because it's for jumping and that like sort of freestyle stuff because it's a bit heavier? Is that?
Not so much. Like I can only really do two freestyle things. I can do a 360 and a Rayleigh, and they're sort of my moves, my go-tos. Yeah, if I'm really overpowered, I'm not really doing 360s, more Rayleighs because they're just super fun. But it's more with the Rayleighs, you know, you kind of lay out flat in the air, and having that extra bit of mass. Yeah, you just feel it a bit more, but it's not. It's completely a first world problem. I could have, if I was only winging, I would probably only own an 85, you know, because then I'd be going out in swells and stuff more. Most of my stuff that I like to do at home is downwind. So, you know, I don't travel to chase ding waves. But yeah, Exmouth's a different thing. I kind of go up there. I don't even really care about downwind when I'm there. I'm not chasing it. All the boys I went up with, they were like, "Oh, let's do a downwind." You know, they were pretty keen for it. I just really love going up there and doing stuff that we don't have here in town. So it was cool. And that way, you know, you're exploring different fields with different equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to go to Dan and Ben, and just maybe like while we're on the 720 and the mast lengths, maybe just what have you guys found with that?
Yeah, Dan.
Me. So with the 720, Jimmy, you mean?
Yeah.
So
you're one of the bigger blokes in the team, you and I.
Yeah.
What's your findings?
Like I've just been up in Exmouth, but I'll be honest, I didn't use the 720 much there. I kind of went with the 850, but I was using the 720 a lot on the river in some of the really gusty stuff down here in Perth before we went up to Exmouth. And yeah, I mean, the big comments I probably have is like having fun trying to tune what works with that 720 with the different tails and different fuse lengths. I'm finding the 720 with the medium fuse or the small fuse is better than the long fuse. And I love the maneuverability of it. And just the speeds that you can get, like that you can clock with it. And you know, I'm bigger, and the guy that I go with, Tim Cromlin back here, who shreds, he's been on the 720 constantly. He's heavier, he's kind of 95 kilos, and he's got no problem with that wing. You know, that's probably my most notable thing with the 720. Even when we were up in Exmouth with Tim, he was charging, and it was the 8 foot day that we're talking about with Marcus that we're all out there. I was on the 850. Tim was on the 720 all day, and like I did 74 kilometers on the ding, and he surfed for an extra half hour in the morning, and he'd surf for another hour in the arvo. So we worked out he probably was out there like just, you know, comfortably, you know, well balanced, heavier guy on the 720 with the, I think he had the 150 tail, yeah, for over 100 Ks, you know. That's probably my most notable thing with the 720.
Yeah. Actually, interesting you said about the tail and the fuse length, because when I first got the 720, I was excited. I got all the new gear, got the 720, the large fuse and the smaller tails. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to go long fuse, small tail, 720. It's going to be epic. Went out there and I actually found it a little bit hard to link with the 142 tail with the large fuse, and then I switched to the 150 tail, and I could link like all day. And for me at 82, 83 kilos, that was pretty notable. I could make the 142 work, but I was just that little bit underdone. Even in like 2 to 3 foot sort of waves, I was a little bit underdone. But even with the 150 tail in like 1 to 2 foot waves, it just opened up this whole playground, so to speak, with more speed and the ability to pump. Not too dissimilar from the 850, but yeah, so it's all different for everyone, but it's interesting findings.
Yeah, that maybe it's like the river was short period, you know what river's like. It's kind of like desperate times in Perth. And you kind of put the long fuse, small front wing, larger tail on. It just was too locked in.
Yeah.
Then you go up north, and I mean the 850s, you know, it's only one step up, but you go 850 with the long fuse and a larger tail, which is comparable, and it was epic. Like just so good to be drawn, like long drawn out turns. And you know, it's funny that different swell and different wind and different fetch brings out different things with the gear.
Oh, and even winging to paddling in, like prone or stand up foiling to then toe foiling, it's all very different feels. It's been there's so many variables now.
Yeah, I still like it's I have to almost like write a bit of a notebook, you know, like what I like for different conditions at the moment. So yeah.
And Bongi, what about you? What have you found on the 720?
Yeah, 720. I guess you guys, those boys have been winging a lot. I've been proning mostly lately and downwind. Yeah, 720's been good I actually really like it when the conditions are pretty crappy, like a bit onshore. And I pair it with like the 158 tail. So there's no one around and a long fuse. So you still get that small wing surfy feel, but it's just solid when it's choppy, you're not breaching. And that's probably what I like the most about the 720. And then when it cleans off a bit, I just change the tail, make it a bit smaller. And I just keep the same fuse on to keep it real simple.
Yeah.
And then if it gets bigger, just put the small tail on. So just play with the 3 tails. And when I use the big tail, I just chuck half a degree shim in it just to keep it a bit speedy.
Yeah.
Surface area to just give it heaps of bottom end, you know, especially when it's choppy and you're out the front of a bump and doing, you know, like out of the power source trying to do a bottom turn. It's really nice to have that big bottom end on a small wing that's still turning pretty sharp.
Yeah.
So,
No,
yeah,
for
that's
sure.
what I like most. You can probably relate with that a little bit.
Yeah, no, I've been playing around a bit with the tails and shimming and whatnot, and especially the 720 straight away. I loved it. But one thing I found, because we're going quicker, and because I've been trying to go at whitewaters. Like, that's when I prone fall. I try to do what I would do when I was like surfing a shortboard or a stand up. So hitting whitewaters, rebounds, floaters, kind of thing. And I found it works really well and super stable in the wash, even more so than the 850, just because it's smaller surface area. But when you're coming out of the whitewater, I found it sort of like that easy height was actually working against me coming out of the whitewater. So shimming has helped heaps. And but by shimming, it flattens out that lift when you come out of I guess those high speed turns.
Like for me, I'm not like, I only hit the whitewater when it's real soft and I'm not going to hurt myself. But like having that extra bottom end to come at it slower, you just feel way more chilled than just pinging at it at Mach 10 when, it's everything just slows down and you feel just a bit more confident.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, it's cool. It's I guess it's all the other thing I've done with the 720 is I've downwinded it only once or twice now. And the first time, the most notable one for me was when I downwinded it the first time I got it, and the conditions were epic. And then I got out there and the conditions dropped from like 20 knots to 10, and it was just leftover stuff, and paddled up easy for me. And like, I think got up like second time inside the wind line, so like second attempt, which normally, if I was to start at the wind line, I would have got up first go, almost guaranteed. And then I felt, because the wind had died, it was a little bit more pumping than obviously the 850 would have been, but it's very much a downwindable wing, and I'm actually going to get out on it tomorrow here in Sydney, just to see what it can do, to sort of back up my thoughts on that. But yeah, just the ability that
Hood.
What's that?
It'd be amazing at Hood.
Yeah, the 720.
River. Yeah, because you're just surfing, you're not trying to go fast.
Yeah.
And I used the 850, and we only had one really decent day when we were there, but not pumping, and yeah, that would be the dream spot for it, just to surf downwind, I reckon.
Yeah.
McRae sent me a message. He used his and he's frothing. So he's a winging at Hood River. But yeah, it must be yesterday, I guess. Yeah. He's frothing. And I also did a downwind with it. Me and Craig, the guy I do some testing with up here, and he actually did like a 150 kilometer on a 720.
I believe it.
Just lined up. So its speed is crazy. Like over the distance of a run, the other wing that I was testing was a bit better, which is more for downwind. But just its ability to go fast is pretty impressive.
Yeah. Well, if conditions are epic, the S series are epic to downwind on, because you're just surfing the whole time, and the glide's not as important because you're and like the range isn't as important because it's just good the whole time. Whereas we'll talk about the R series. Yeah, we'll talk about the R series later on, and that's stuff that's coming real soon. But the S series, they're still very much downwindable wings, and very good downwind wings, I reckon. It's
I think, and when you go on that fast, it feels really solid. Like you don't feel sketchy at all.
Yeah.
When you get down around twos, if your setup's not solid, it can be a little bit. Like you want to be on the right gear.
Yeah, you want to trust the setup underneath you.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously we're pretty happy with that. But he was like, this thing's like rock solid. Like he was going that quick, like banking into a bottom turn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was frothing on it.
Yeah. So I think the 7. But at the end of the call, we might go through like what our ideal like 2 or 3 wave quiver, 2 or 3 wing quiver would be. But the 720 is kind of probably one of my favorite foils at the moment for our stuff, and it's definitely, for anything in the waves, it's been my favorite by a long way. And I keep forgetting how good the 850 is because I keep using the 720, but the 720 is still my fave, and the 850 always surprises me when I jump back on it how good it is. But I want to talk about the 980 now, and I want to start with Dan, because I reckon you've had the most use of it.
Man, I froth on the 980. I feel like it's kind of that, it's Marcus's 850, like, because Marcus is a bit smaller. And like Perth's just starting to turn. We're starting to get wind. Some people wouldn't think so, like with how light we're going out in these conditions out here at the moment. But late last week when we got back from Exmouth, and then probably about 3 weeks ago, we had like proper southerlies, almost southeast. And I find when it's like that here, you get swell coming in on like sou'wester, still a bit of winter swell, but it's kind of a little bit gutless. Like the southerly winds kind of, I don't know if it cancels it out. I can't really describe it, but it's a bit underpowered in the ocean. So we've done a few of these runs over the last few weeks where you kind of go to 850 and you're working just a little bit hard, and you slap the 980 on, and it just, with the 158 tail especially, it just seems to hold you there. And when you kind of downwinding, it just becomes like a skate park. Like you got these kind of southwest swells coming in and the southerly winds, and you just kind of cutting left, pinging off it, cutting towards the beach, turning, and you kind of got this radius that's almost more than 180 degrees to play with. And yeah, like we've done, we did 2 or 3 the other day in succession, just testing things like going 850, 158 tail, 980, 150 tail, that kind of thing. And yeah, the 980 is just, I think for people that are a little bit heavier, it's just amazing. It's just a great wing, and slightly gutless. You just want to go to it, and people have been noticing that in the surf too.
Yeah, no, in the surf, the 980 has been really fun on those sort of flat days or flatter days, or sort of 1 foot days here in Sydney, or when I was up at Scott's Head with Ben, we had really small conditions, and I left the 980 on my stand up, and it was actually so much fun. It was made a 1/2 foot unbroken lump at Scott's Head halfway down the beach from the point, like a super fun session. And it was to me, it's just the 850. It felt like the 850 did, just in smaller waves. So it just, the way it scales is like, it feels like the same foil if you get it in the similar conditions, which is exactly what we wanted to achieve,
Yeah.
And so similar for the weight stuff, like you're saying, the 850 for Marcus is the 980 for you, Dan, because of the extra, 10, 20 kilos, whatever it is.
For sure. And I mean, there was a session, there's another wave up north called Graveyards, and it's, it's probably a little bit, we had it a bit of a kind of a gutless day. And I took the 980 with the small fuse and the 158 tail. It was probably a little bit skittish, and then had another session, 980 long fuse with the 158 tail. I don't know how you describe that wave, Marcus. Like kind of wraps into a big bay, loses a bit of power maybe.
I'm working on these guys to get footage of their spots, because 8 foot XE and then gutless Graveyards.
Well, it's such a diverse place up there, and like there's a place called Bommy, and you pop your Bommy cherry. That's what Tim took me in. It's like an outer Bommy, but that wave was phenomenal. So you got kind of outer Bommies up there. You've got outer Wabiri, that's like Marcus described it before. Then it's just such an incredible place for foiling, just bucket list kind of stuff. But you almost need all 3 foils for up there, I reckon. 720, 850, and the 980, because it's just depends what
8 foot
what the conditions are.
When I was up there, it was flat. Yeah, it was. Yes. Marcus, because you're the lighter of us, how you find the 980? Is it your flat water pump foil, or is it not quite big enough?
No, it could be, for sure. I don't really do that though.
Is it your dock start foil?
Yeah, it would be for sure my dock start foil. But yeah, don't do much of that. It's, for me, we actually had the samples sent to us when we were in Thailand, and me and I think Dan may have left. I can't remember, but we got them.
I was still there, and I filmed you guys.
Yes, we had him for maybe a day when Dan left. The wave was literally uncatchable pretty much. It was at the Sunover dealer meeting, and there was a river outlet, and we were standing on the edge of it because the water runs out of it so quick. So it creates a quite a strong drop off. And me and Ben were literally standing on the sand, pushing onto the wave so we could get going and getting up and going.
That's basically a beach start, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot easier than a beach start.
Yeah.
But it was a session saver for sure, and you could pump around and still surf it. And yeah, like you guys just previously mentioned, it just feels the same as the 850, but you know, slightly more stiff, I guess, for me, especially because it's a big foil for me. So it's harder to roll over, but obviously. And one of the things that I really like about it, and the only footage I actually did take in Exmouth was not of me, it was of my partner, and she's a really intermediate winger. She can foil no problem, but she can't jibe or anything. And, you know, getting going, she needs to be powered, or, you know, she needs a decent size foil. And yeah, I pretty much had her on the 980 the whole time at Exmouth, and just with the long fuse and big tail, keep it nice and stable. And it was really cool to see how easy it was for her to use, you know, with the lower skill, I guess. Even though it's winging and it's probably one of the easier forms of foiling, she's still super new to it. So that was a bit of an eye-opener for me. But yeah, it's definitely going to be totally usable for a sort of beginner / intermediate winger, a lightweight one. And for me, it's been like a session saver prone wing or wing. If it's really light, I'm kind of looking at it going, well, it's only 10 knots, I'll chuck it on, because I've just got one tiny board, and my biggest sail's a 4 meter. But I can easily use a 980, my 48 litre board, and a 4 meter in, 10 knots I can get going. And
I did similar yesterday. I went out in the 980, and it was one of those days on the East Coast that it was howling northwest all day. And then when I got down to the beach, it was just starting to die off, and there were like 3 wingers out there. They were all drifting. And Will Sproul, one of the guys who works at WSS Boards, he was like, "You heading out?" I'm like, "Oh, I had 40 minutes. Otherwise I was going to be late for dinner." I'm like, "Oh, let's just do it." Didn't even have time to look at it, rigged up. Only had a 4.5, only had my downwind board, and the 980 was my biggest foil. I'm like, all right, this is what I'm using. Hopefully I can get up. Jumped on. One gust came through just as I hit the water and like pumped up. It's got straight up, and I'm like, oh, how good. And then I winged all the way out, got one wave, and then came off foil. And I was like, damn it. And then I sort of floated out for a bit. Then another gust came, got up, and I pretty much winged all the way back into the beach. And I was like, that'll do. So it was, and everyone else was pretty much off foil the whole time. So it was the 980, yeah, it performed, and the downwind board, obviously, the bigger boards helps. But you still need a foil that gets lifting and like as soon as that puff comes. So I feel you. The 980 was good.
Yeah, session saver that is still fun, really. Like it's in gutless waves, which is the only ways I'm ever going to use it in. It's still totally surfable. It's not like you're trying to use it in something it's not meant for.
Yeah, even on the takeoffs, I found the 980 didn't like overload you. Like I kind of thought it would for the way it pumps, I guess. Like it pumps for a long time. Yeah. And it's good for linking waves. And I think I mentioned it last time, but I taught these 2 YouTubers, and they were going for their double dip, like the first, linkage of a wave. And I put on the 850 to start with. Then it was a smaller day the next time we went out and put on the 980. And on this second or third wave on the 980, they linked a wave, and it was so easy he thought it didn't count. Like he said, oh, so that was the same wave, but it's pumped across the rip. I'm like, no, that was a different wave. that was a double dip. Like, oh, really? I want to do it again now. 2 waves later, he did it again. So the 980S was like crazy good for those guys who want to up their beach break linkages,
Yeah, I've noticed that with a bunch of our customers on the West here who were on the 850, and they could link up, maybe 50% of the time, and then they got the 980 and they were just so many waves. And like I said before, like WA is pretty dependent on linking waves if you want to make it worth it. And yeah, some of these heavier guys or less experienced guys that just changed it all. And it's funny because they went to it, got really good and could link up tons of waves. And a few of them that I've chatted with have gone now back to the 850 with the 158 tail. And now that's their go-to. It's kind of just like it
Fast
progressed
forward.
them. Yeah,
Yeah.
progressed them, and now they've gone back to the smaller foil. So yeah, I think it's a pretty handy wing. It's going to have its place for a lot of people.
Yeah. And what about you, Bongi? I know Harry Lee pretty much had you at 980 for the last 2 or 3 months. But when you got to go of it,
I don't get to use it very often because I'm always lending it to people. But yeah, I actually love it, eh? Like I sometimes, like just talking about it now, I'm kind of really looking forward to 1/2 foot waves, which we haven't had for a while. And I've been like you, just 720 every time I go for a prone. It just stays set up unless I have to go for a downwind. But yeah, I really look forward to the real shitty 1/2 foot day, and I'm just the only person at the beach on a 980, and it's not so much the pumping around because I feel comfortable pumping around on the small one. It's more just the crazy bottom end. Like I can stuff up, like the wave can just disappear and barely be moving, and then just pump back out and find another lump somewhere. So it can be super onshore, glassy, flat, just no power, and it's sick fun. I love it.
Yeah.
And I like it with a small fuse too. It makes it super surfy. Like I could talk about how big and solid it is, but you can I feel like I turn that and the wings come out of the water way more than the 720 because you got that little bit of extra span. And when you pair it with a small fuse, it's still pretty playful. So
yeah. Yeah, I know Harry Lee's been loving it for downwind too. And Benny Raymond here in Sydney, it's sort of it definitely has got him more confident for downwind runs. He could on the northeast days back home, you got to be able to go left pretty well because it's kind of pushes you into shore. And he couldn't go left on his old setup, but he's able to go left on the 980 just because it gives him that little bit more time, sort of peel across and out. So it broke his Zoolander, only able to go right. He can go left
Not
now.
an ambi turner.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of really light wind downwinders on it, and it's been fine. Like it can handle pretty minimal wind for downwind.
Yeah.
It's good for that. I mean, some of the downwinders I probably just sort of stayed at home or gone to work or done something else, but the 980 got me from start to finish.
Session saver.
Yeah. I really like it.
Yeah. I think before we talk about the new stuff that's coming, why don't we just quickly touch on the I guess the tails and the fuses, because I feel like we've kind of, because we've only got a few front wings, it's actually allowed us to really dive deep on how tails and fuses really change the feel of the front wing. So Marcus, why don't you run us through what you've been playing with, like long versus short fuse, and then big versus small tail and that as well.
Yeah. So winging in waves, like I mentioned earlier, I'm going long fuse. Anything in big waves, if I'm towing, I'll have long fuse. And it's usually a smaller tail. So you're gaining that pitch stability that you lost by losing surface area in the back. And then when it's, everything's happening slower, like prone foiling, or even downwind, it's usually medium for that. Although, when I was experimenting with this newer stuff where I was using much bigger tails, then I had to go to the small fuse, which I actually never used until then. So unless I'm winging in really dead flat water for freestyle, I'll use a short fuse because you can change direction and pop into the air much better. But otherwise, I've never really used the short too much. I just prefer the medium. So when I prone, usually 850 or 720 now, as I'm discovering, but the 850, I'm definitely not going to the short. I just like the medium and the 150, the same aeroplane that we launched.
The OG.
Still just love that. If I'm in doubt, if it's too small or pumping into an onshore wind or something, then yeah, I'll just use that. And if it's glamour conditions, then yeah, 720 or offshore, help with the pump. And then I've been using the 720, but short fuse with the bigger tail, tails that will be coming
Yeah, we
out.
can talk about those because they'll probably be released in maybe a week or two after we sort of release this. Yeah,
Yep.
the 175 AR and the 188 AR tails are kind of the new additions in terms of tails. And I'm actually looking at Dan because I know Dan's frothing out on these
I haven't
tails,
taken it.
probably the most.
The 175, I kind of, when I first got it, I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, it's so big. I think it's from going from one out tails, but then I kind of put it on, and I think I put it on like just before we went to Hood, and I paddled it up in the flat because I was like, oh, I've got to test it if we're going to take it. And then I didn't use it when we were away, and when I came back, I put it on, and I've either gone 175 or 158. I haven't really gone smaller than that, and I haven't really gone bigger than that. I just think it's perfectly suited, those two tails. Like the 850 with the 175, incredible. And then the 980 with the 158, and they're my kind of main go-tos.
Yeah.
Love them. Absolutely love them. And I think, what did you call it the other day, Marcus? You had the gliding term.
Think rate. Yeah.
Think rate. Yeah. And that's the best way to describe it. It just, yeah, you're not, it just holds you in the air, sync rate. The easiest way to describe it. And I don't know, I'm a lazy guy. Like, I'm not going to lie. Life's hard enough. and I always like to kind of just, even if it's, what are we talking? 20%. If something's a little bit easier, I'll take that, and you don't lose a huge amount in turnability. What you gain is superior to what you lose. And not that you lose a huge amount, but what you gain in terms of just being able to hold through a turn, or hold you up a little bit higher on the mast, get you a little bit more efficient. Yeah, the big tails are for me.
It is crazy that hold you're talking about. One of the things I really liked about like the 850 originally when I tried it was, I guess, the slipperiness of it. And I still think the smaller tails are slipperier and sort of hold their glide and speed a bit better than a bigger tail. A bigger tail is going to allow you to tap into that low end and that lower gear, but you kind of lose that agility and slipperiness. I went towing with the 188 half-degree shim, long fuse, and the 720S the other day, and it honestly made the foil feel completely different. It was actually impossible for me. It was really, really difficult to pump and link waves, but because I was towing, I wasn't really focused on that, and it just felt so locked in and like solid underfoot on the wave. It was like just turning, like it felt like I was back on a quad, like it was just so solid. And I don't know, it was a very different feel, I guess, to what the 720S with the 150 or the 150 AR tail feels. And that was with the 188 shimmed, and it was just if you pumped too much, it was just sort of stalled out. But on the wave, it was like allowed you to go slower and really like rip it in. It was in the pocket and white water, and yeah, nice.
There seems to be a fair difference between the 188 and the 175. That's what I find. If I go to that 188, it's almost like it's too much. 175 is just that little bit looser, Yeah,
it's a big tail. Like it almost looked. It was a crazy looking setup. 720 and that 188 tail, like with the long fuse, it was just like it looked like two front wings bolted on either side. It was a fair bit going on. But those big tails, you can, as I said before, it's amazing the different feels you can create by using a different tail, different fuse, and then a couple shims here and there with different combos of the front foils. And obviously before, when we originally launched just one tail, it was like, yep, this feels good. Nothing really I'm probably still the most dialed in on the 850 with the 150 tail, but now with all the other stuff, it's like, man, I want to try this, I want to try that. I've got a setup in the garage. I got the 720 short fuse with the 188 half degree shimmed, because that's, Marcus, you said you tried that and really liked it. So that's my next sort of go-to, but it's just sitting in the garage waiting for the right day. It's ready to go. What have you found, Mongy, with the those bigger tails?
Yeah, I've done a few, probably more so downwind. I've done a few really light downwinds and I've used them. And yeah, they've been pretty crazy. Like it feels like you just about go up a size in your front wing when you go to the really big tail wing.
Yeah.
But I found it's pretty nice to use a shorter fuse just to keep it light on it. Like the first time I went with it, I used a long fuse just to give me, that like low sink rate, like that bigger spread. But which was fine, and it did just stay in the air. But when you had to pump, because they're so spread out, it was a bit heavy to pump with a big tail that far from the front wing. So then I put the short fuse on it like a day later in the same downwind conditions, and it was like, that was probably more like what I would go to, because then it's still big and you still get that, it still keeps you up high, but when you go to pump, it's not so much to push against.
Yeah.
So yeah, for downwind, I think they're going to really help, especially like beginners and intermediate downwind guys. Like sometimes you can sort of take or leave it and you'll get away with whatever, but when you're sort of someone that's sort of coming down a bit and going back up 3 or 4 times a run or whatever, then I think the big tail will be pretty sweet for that. And it does paddle up really easy because you just stomp on it.
Yeah, especially paired with a bigger foil. Like I guess what I said before about pumping with the 720 with the big tail, it was like the tail was making the front foil go too slow for itself.
Yeah, I've had that. But yeah, with the 980 at the front with a short fuse, it feels pretty good. Like it feels pretty natural.
Yeah, it's important that you sort of understand that too. Like a front foil only wants to go a certain speed, and the tail definitely tweaks that. But if you tweak it too much, it only works when you like power it up. And if you ever get away from that power, it'll stop.
I even notice even with the 158 tail with the 720, it's such a different pump to the 150, which is totally doable, and it does keep it, and it's fine. It's pretty nice, but you can definitely notice that like it's a little bit, I don't know, it's just different. It takes a few waves to get used to it.
Yeah,
and that's only one size different. But yeah, the bigger, I haven't done the 177 with the 720 yet, so I can't comment on that. But I'll set it up tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll be going for extremes. Yeah. Why don't we talk about the what's coming? Because I guess that's the tail. So we got the 188 and the 175 AR tails, and then we got some. Oh, I'm pretty excited about these front wings that are releasing. Probably the 1130S is probably not what people would have thought I was more excited about, because obviously there's the R series, the 77, and the 860 as well. The foils we used in the racing in Hawaii and Hood River. But the 1130S I'm actually probably more excited about, because I've been coaching with it a fair bit the last sort of 2 months, and seeing the joy that foil brings in light downwind stuff. I've been using it with the foil drive sort of to teach people and get up and going, and then small waves and bay downwind runs and ocean downwind runs. It's pretty cool to see the happiness and the ability to get up and going and those breakthrough moments. To me, it does, like, same thing. It sort of feels like the same as the 850, just scaled up. I did a really fun run with Josh Koo, a botany run, and with the 1130 and the 980, and the 1130 was actually my preferred foil on that day because it was just so easy and it still turned so well. The 980 was a little bit more agile, but it was going a little bit too for the tail I had it tuned to go a bit too fast. So the 1130S is a pretty cool wing. I'm excited about how that one's going to go with everyone, and maybe Marcus, maybe you haven't used it much, but people you've seen use it, demoed it out. What's the feedback kind of been?
I first used it in a downwinder, and same, like, had so much fun on it. It made the run doable and still fun, whereas usually it would have been survival. So and that's probably also, before having Code foils, I used to own like one front wing. I think I owned a lift 120 and I did everything on it. So yeah, it's not saying that there's other brands foils that can't do that, but it was so cool and you could still surf it. So that was cool. My partner, I put her on that for her sort of winging, for her introduction to code. Just knowing that she was going to be fine on it, and she was, and we went straight to the 980. So that was pretty cool. We've lent it to a bunch of guys here who are intermediate downwinders. Maybe some are even still, you know, verging on like beginner / intermediate, and they're having a bit of success on them. And they've been working hard through winter, like training, trying to get the flat water pop up. And he had one of the guys had a breakthrough on the 1130 doing that, whereas previously he'd only done it on the big Axis stuff. So that was pretty cool. Are we only talking about 1130 now, or all the new stuff?
1130, 860, and 770. We'll keep the rest a little hush hush. Yeah.
So that's sort of my take with 1130. 860 is mental. Hood River is such a funny story for me, especially because we had this 860. Ben had used it already. The race was so light, I'd never used it, and I was like, I'm just going to chuck it on. Bolted it on. I think I had a medium fuse in the car. I was so rushed, I forgot we'd been working in the code booth earlier, and I was just so out of whack. And I was like, I'm just putting everything big on. I put 860, the medium fuse or whatever, but one of the big tails, the 175, literally had never foiled it. And the gun went off and I just paddled up. I was like, oh, wow, that was crazy. And I was sort of near Ben on the start, and Ben was up maybe, I don't know, 5 seconds earlier than me. And in the Hood River race, that 5 seconds equated to him being front row and me being probably, I don't know, felt like I was in maybe 25th, 30th, surrounded by like just guys going mental, just pumping and, you know, going hard. Probably, you know, trying to use a fast wing in a race with no energy, perhaps. I don't know. I don't know what they were using or what their story was, but everyone around me was going so hard, and I was just standing there and I was moving. Like I was just going the same speed, thinking, you know, these guys are going to keep this up, or like, you know, surely you can't pump like that for 15 Ks. We're not even in the flat bit yet, you know. And slowly the crowd thinned. I think people were dropping off, or I was going quicker. I don't know. And, you know, I was so focused on the last kilometer. I knew it was going to be dead flat for at least a kilometer, and knowing I wasn't going to make it, I was like, save every pump you've got for that last kilometer. And, you know, maybe you'll make it. I didn't make it, but that's another story. But it was crazy. I just crept up through the field, like right up past, you know, these kids like Jack Ho, the F1 guru, and crept right up to Eric, and we had a bit of a laugh because he battled it out with Ben in M2M, and he's like, oh man, not again. And I was like, don't worry, I'm not going to make it to the finish. And I didn't, but it was crazy. I literally just kind of stood there for the race. You know, obviously you got to pump in sections. It was super flat, and but I used virtually no energy, and I pumped so far. I got so close to the finish. By my standards, it was mental how far I pumped. And yeah, like Jack went back past me, and I kind of lost Eric, who I was really level with. And then another kid was going to pass me, John from Australia. I was like, oh man, I can't let another one pass me. So I just paddled up on the flat and went to the finish, and it just blew me away. And then when I got to the end, and Ben was like, man, that foil's crazy. I was battling for first, and I'll let him, he might want to tell that story when he describes it. But yeah, that foil is amazing. And obviously you won the world championship on it, and the range on it's insane. The fact that Ben's battling for the lead at Hood in no wind, and you're using it in an open ocean race, not only paddling up at the start, but going at a high end speed, enough to be at the front the whole way. And then I know he stuffed up, but then he paddled back.
Right.
It's crazy. That wing blows me away. The R series in general blow me away, but that 860, what it can do is crazy. And I think it's so easy to paddle up that intermediate foilers are going to be able to paddle it up and go fast on it. Just
Yeah, that's the craziness, I think, really about the 860 is the range on it. And I think we've been calling it the race series, but so like the S, we're not really labeling it anything. The R, one of the guys, one of the shops said, I explained the difference in speed I was doing from like 3 minutes to 2 minutes on this 860R per kilometer. And he's like, oh, does R stand for range? I'm like, yeah, could do. You know, that's probably a good one. Because like you mentioned for Molokai, it definitely wasn't the fastest foil for like the fastest section of the race, but it was the fastest foil for the entire race. And that's, you know, for varied conditions like Molokai to Oahu, or like your local run that you never know what it's going to be like because the wind is real shitty and the swell or whatever it is. For most people, we don't have clockwork conditions like you do in Hawaii. And the R series it makes it really easy to make the right decision, whether it be the 770 or the 860. And basically, especially the we actually tested a few sizes, and the 770, 860 were by far the most used and favorite because look, they still went quick enough. Like I used the 770 at Padalamua and got the official win. Edo was a bit quicker on his setup, but it was right there, you know, and it was crazy the range on these falls, and actually really worth bringing up. The 770R paddles up a lot easier than the 850S, like a lot easier.
That's what I was going to say. The numbers are kind of irrelevant, you know, like, which is the gold standard of measurement with our industry. But we've been taking the 860 and the 1130 downwind here, you know, interchanging between all the people that are just testing. No problem in light winds. I'm talking like negligible to offshore with a bit of fetch from outside swell. And we're comfortably getting to Brighton, which is 15 Ks, or you know, Trig, which is 17 Ks. It's amazing, you know, like we're just unlocking these incredible sessions. You know, and yeah, I don't know, like I'm like rallying the troops even today. It was like blowing offshore, you know, paired with the right tail, you're just doing things that I never thought you could do. And it gets really scary because then if you have to do a day job, you're like, there's no bad days, you know, like when do you go to work?
If the wind's blowing like the right direction or even close to the right direction, you're downwinding now because the 860R and 1130S makes downwinding super fun no matter what. And Bongi, do you want to quickly tell us the Hood River story? Because
not really. It's pretty similar to Marcus's. I was, I guess, just a little bit ahead, and I think it was the top three. We were together most of the way, and I was pretty similar to Marcus. Like I felt like I wasn't really working because I was just worried about pumping for a kilometre. And in hindsight, I probably should have gone a size up tail because I was nowhere near max speed on what the setup I had. So in hindsight, I just thought about it then. Probably a bigger tail would have possibly got me pumping to the finish, which might have been a better result. But just the ease of like everyone was coming in, just cooked, and I was like, man, apart from the pump at the end, that was pretty fresh.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was the foil. Like I was surprised during the race, I was literally testing the foil, going like every now and then I'd just spurt for like half a K and catch back up to the leader. And then I'd just go efficient again and just hang, you know, and then he'd pump really hard and get away. Like he was super fit, and, you know, he's really impressive how well he pumped through the flat as well. But like the potential of it, if you wanted to work it hard, it was pretty impressive.
Mm.
Yeah, just like what you guys said. There wasn't super bumpy. I could push through gaps in Hood River, like past bumps, without too much effort, like just line up the right sections. And it's not like I was doing up and overs. I was just finding gaps and cruising through.
Yeah.
So yeah, my heart rate was pretty low for a lot of it, which was surprising. And I always thought, oh, maybe, I'm just biased in my brain and I've created this falsity because everyone's coming in just blowing up. And I was like, oh, man, I felt like it was kind of fun. Like it was a fun downwinder.
Yeah.
But I was pretty really stoked. And to be honest, since I've been back, I've mostly been on a 770 back in Australia because we've got those runs down south with a lot of energy, probably more so than the Maliko run, I reckon. And the 770, and I've definitely fallen back in love with that since I've been back home. And I've had no choice because everyone else wants to borrow my 860. So, but the 770 with that extra bit of energy is pretty, it's just, it's a scaled wing, so it's pretty special. But if you've got that little bit extra power, it's, it lights up. And I guess on the 1130, I haven't had much time on that for exactly the same reason. So the local guy here, which probably a lot of people know, is Rob Piros. He's always ringing. He probably rings me every day to see if he can borrow my setup because he's waiting to get his shipped in. Every day, he's like, you got the 1130 I can borrow?
Yeah.
Like a bigger guy, just had a shoulder reco. He's probably the perfect guy to test it. Can't really paddle. I think he got a Sun Overboard, a 5 foot. You guys would know.
411.
Yeah, he said he spoke to you about it, but he's got 411, plenty of volume, and he paddles onto anything. And he said first wave since the shoulder reco that he's actually been able to foil. He linked 4 or 5 ways, and he sent he's got his watch, so he sends me his stats, and he's getting 1.5K waves, and he's like, we used to give him shit. He's got these chicken arms that he gets going, and he's like, I think I've lost my chicken arms on the 1130. So yeah, he's probably stuff like that. It probably makes me the most excited for the 1130, hearing people like that, that have foiled a lot and a lot of products. Just genuinely, I know he's an excitable guy to the general public, and I talk to him one-on-one. I'm like, don't just say what you want me to hear. Tell me what you think. And he's genuinely excited, and that that sort of stuff probably makes me more excited than flying downwind on a smaller swing we can get.
Oh, for sure. That's what I was saying. The 1130, yes. Likewise, I had the 1130 and the 860 demoed out today because basically if we want to try it, word's gotten out, and it's good. It's people are breaking new barriers and able to surf it harder than they would normally, and it's super fun foil. The 1130, and it still goes pretty quick, the 1130, which is actually in the testing, it definitely, the discussions were made that we need to do a bigger one because the 1130S, while it's good, it just has to be, it can't go that fast, I guess, and still work in the really flat stuff. So bigger ones are on the way for sure. But the 860 are, I guess, what was I going to say about? I think I was going to talk about Molokai, about how the 860R. I was going to tell the story about the 860R and my choice for wing leading up to Molokai. I almost told Marcus not to bring my 860R over because we had a tow wing that I really wanted to try, a prototype, and I was like, nah, don't bring the 860. The 770 I can use in pretty much flat, and Molokai won't be flat. And so I didn't even use it until after Paddle-a-Mua, just because it was the forecast looked a bit light for Molokai. So I tried out the 860R literally, I think 6 days before Molokai to Oahu, and Ben and I think Josh had tried the 860 on the Malika run, and you guys both said it was good, but probably a bit big for the conditions that we had it in, and because I think it was a pretty good day. And I was like, okay, well, the 770 is my wing then. Looked at the forecast and it's looking pretty east and pretty light. So I was like, okay, I better try this 860 just to see how it goes. And I did a back-to-back run, 770 to 860. And basically I got them going essentially the same speed, and the 860 was just that little bit easier because I was just maxed, like holding on the whole time, not having to pump as much. So I was like, okay, there's something in this. And, you know, obviously it worked out. But going into it, I thought, look, if I can have a good start and then not lose too much in the middle and then have a good finish, I've got a good chance at winning this. But I might be coming in at the wall like 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th kind of area. And when I came into the to the, you know, when Oscar and I were going across the channel 1 and 2 for pretty much the entire thing from the start to, you know, probably a K from the finish until Edo caught us up, I was like, man, Oscar must be using a pretty similar size foil. We're both going to be pumping in. And obviously I came down with a bit of backwash and boat wash and whatnot off the wall, and I thought my race was done. And then when I paddled it up in the flat or headwind with 50 something Ks in the legs, I was pretty stoked I chose the 860, not the 770. That's for sure. You know, because paddling it up in the flat water takes a lot out of you. So yeah, the ability to, I guess the range on it, to be able to hang, to hold off all those faster foils that couldn't quite foil at the start of the race at Molokai, and then to make a mistake and then still make up the ground because I can pump further in. That's what won me the race, basically. You know, the range in that foil and the ability to cover all sorts of conditions from flat with windier back to open ocean channel to headwind and bugger all swells. So yeah, the 860R was pretty impressive. I think it's going to help a lot of people downwind. It's glidey. It goes pretty quick. And I guess we're probably playing down how fast it goes because it was the fastest across the channel. You know, it wasn't slow, but I guess we're comparing it to the 770, which obviously goes faster. But yeah, this next release I'm pretty excited about. You know, there's 3 foils that I'm pumped on. But I think we try to wrap it up. But I wanted to finish with if you could only have 2 foils in the range, what would you choose? What's your 2 quiver setup? Maybe start with Ben.
Oh. Shit. I would probably, from where I live, oh geez, I'd probably go the 770, just front wings, 770 and 720, which is probably a bit odd. But when the surf's tiny, because of the 770's efficiency and pretty early lift, I could actually surf the 770, and I can downwind it in just about anything. So that wing, I could, like, if I was going to have a 1 wing quiver, I'd just about have that. But then to prone surf, so the 2 things I do most, prone surf and downwind. So I'd want the 720 for prone surfing 90% of the time, as long as it's over a foot. And yeah, the 770 I would surf when it's like high tide, barely breaking, because I kind of love that anyway. It's kind of like snowboarding on unbroken. Like I really like surfing the 770 occasionally anyway. So probably those 2, I reckon.
Yeah, nice. Let's go, Marcus.
Pretty harsh question, no.
It did just the 2 front wings, yeah. But yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah. If I can have multiple tails,
Unlimited tails, just front
Look,
wings.
I think the same 720 and 770. And I'd be using a big tail to prone it to make it easier until I move to the East Coast and I'm at the point break with Bongi. And yeah, 770 just for downwind. I can use that in super light wind and it never maxes out. So it's kind of like, that'd be it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, cool. So same, 720, 770. What about you, Dan? I'm expecting something different from you.
Well, I want 3. But if I can't have 3, 850S and then the 860R But I really think that, you know, the 850S and the 1130S, and you'll be, you know, it's like some people here have the 720S and the 980S. It covers all the conditions.
Yeah.
Mine would be 850S, 1130S, and then, you know, you got to have your downwind wing. So I'm going to go 860R. It's got to be 3.
Yeah. Yeah. Now for me, it's 720 and 860, and I think it kind of that's your downwind wing in your 860. And if it's too small, like the 720 for me is like, I guess your 850 for most surfing conditions. And I feel like I can pump around in most surf I want to be riding on the 720, and then the 860. The reason I choose the 860 over the 770 is because I feel like I can get the 860 going about as quick as the 770 in most conditions, but I can also use the 860 pretty comfortably in day runs. And we get lots of westerlies in Sydney in winter, so I wouldn't be able to use the 770. It wouldn't be as fun on the 770 in day runs. So yeah, that's my quiver. I reckon if we could only have 2 and unlimited tails, but yeah, it's a tough one. Like obviously, we're lucky enough to have one of everything. So
yeah. 850, 860 is kind of the same as Marcus and Bongi's 720, 770 setup for me. That's what if it was 2, it'd be that 850, 860.
Yeah. No, it's exciting. Lots of stuff coming out. But yeah, thanks guys for the time, and I hope you guys all listening enjoyed our discussion on how we got to all what's coming and what we've got. But yeah, that's the Code catch up number 2, and I'm sure there'll be plenty more as we release more stuff and do some more cool things. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys.
Great.